Check.
Okay.
That's my favorite tempo to talk at. No, I talk way slower than that. So.
We're gonna need to slow down the click track for that one. Hey there! Welcome to Songs Off the Vine, the show where we have fresh and honest conversations with songwriters, musicians, and creatives about their lives, their story, and how they make the stuff that they make. I'm your host, Tim Ostdiek. Welcome to episode 2. Thanks for tuning in. I'm having so much fun making this show, kind of building this thing in the air. This is the first time I've hosted a podcast. I'm having such a good time learning. Please feel free to reach out if you got any questions or suggestions or ideas to make this thing better. Trying to build something good, something of quality here that has some character, and that's always focused on community. And I think this episode really reflects that. If you're digging the show so far, please subscribe wherever you're listening and give us a 5-star rating if you dig it. That always helps us find more folks. If you're interested in catching me in concert, on March 21st, I'm doing a show. It's actually going to be a live filming of a show called Stories Behind the Songs with Dave Calkins. And it's kind of a private thing, but if you want to get a spot, shoot me an email at timostdiek@gmail.com. There are a few spots left, and we'd love to have you there. Now let's get to this week's episode. The guest this week is my friend Antonio Lopez. The Boulder Weekly says Lopez's words feel like a sacred mantra for the coming days. Taste Culture says his words may be physically quiet, but spiritually they are louder than a riot. It says he's shared the stage with Carlos Santana. I think you're going to have to tune into the episode to get more of that. He's got a new single out now called Lone Lobo. It's just a wonderful song. Antonio is the first musician I met when I moved to Colorado. We talk a little bit about that, about meeting, about our experiences kind of growing up in the music scene. Antonio is just such an amazing musician, such an amazing person. He's got a lot of wisdom to share. And this is just a really fun, open, and honest chat. So I hope you dig it. Also, after the interview, we recorded a cover of John Prine's Long Monday. So you can catch that on this YouTube channel as well. But let's get into the show, y'all. Antonio Lopez. Antonio, thanks for coming on Songs Off the Vine.
Of course, yeah. Thanks for having me, Tim.
How you been?
Been doing all right, man. All things considered, I feel blessed.
Yeah, we're here. We're in Longmont, Colorado. I think you drove like a couple blocks to get here, which is nice.
That's true, yeah.
It's fun how many like killer songwriters you have within. I think from this location, I think there's like 10 pretty decent songwriters within 10 blocks of where we're at currently.
Yeah, we live in an undisclosed location in Longmont, Colorado.
It's a bunker.
And there is a lot of good songwriters in the neighborhood.
Yeah, it's bonkers. So I moved here in 2012. What year did you move here?
2012.
Okay, it was like around the same time.
Yep.
I moved here from a town called Scottsbluff, and I was like, oh, this seems like a good little spot to do some music. And I was trying to find some community, and I made a little post on Craigslist. I was like, I like Josh Ritter and Amos Lee and people like that, and I'm just looking for like-minded musicians. And it was like 15 years ago, you replied.
Yep.
And it was crazy. And same kind of backstory, moving here to pursue music from a small town called Alamosa.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, what was the music scene like in Alamosa?
You know, surprisingly for as small as it was pretty good.
Yeah. And
I attribute that to like 2 main factors. One of those being a person that still lives down there named Don Richmond, who he has a recording studio down there called Howling Dog Studios. And it's got a funny story behind the name of the studios. He named it Howling Dog Studios because next door to him, there was a dog that would howl a lot.
That's awesome.
So he's like, well, there it is, Howling Dog Studios. Yeah. And, growing up, I didn't realize how much of a treasure Don Richmond was. And after moving away, I realized just how special he is. And running the studio down there, he records a lot of the musicians there regionally. And he also does like a lot of national people too. Like I don't know if you're familiar with Eliza Gilkinson.
Yeah.
But like he's done her last couple records. And Yeah, I mean, I worked with Don Richmond, starting in like my 8th grade metal band called Self Inflicted. We recorded a 4-song EP that never like got finished, you know.
Is it still out there somewhere?
You know, I got like probably a couple CDRs in a box, like in my basement.
Mm-hmm.
That who knows? I know they say CDRs like degrade over time, but I don't know. Like, part of me wants to hear them.
Yeah.
And part of me is like, nah, dude. Like, it's better just having that memory. Because if you do hear them, you're probably gonna be sad.
It's tough. It's
it might be pretty funny though.
It might be, and maybe it's like it's so tricky with that like really early chorus stuff. You're like,
yeah,
it might be really good.
Yeah.
Who knows? And I feel like the degrading of quality, like for a high school metal band, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, and the crazy thing about creating and songwriting, man, it's like I kind of feel like probably the execution of that recording was not good. Like I guarantee it's not good.
Yeah.
But I bet like just like from like the inspiration standpoint and like the creative standpoint, I bet it's probably pretty badass.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because there's something about creating so early on in your process. You kind of think it's going to be way easier of life than it really is.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, oh man, like I'm going to move to Longwood, Colorado and like make all kinds of cool friends like Tim Ostdiek.
It'll be
like,
easy.
Probably like 6 months later, we'll be playing Red Rocks or something like that,
Yeah.
And here we are.
Here we are.
Like what's
Close.
that? 13 years later. Yeah, I played at Red Rocks up at the up by the bathrooms, up at the top.
So you did it.
So I did it, man. I could retire now.
God damn it.
Yeah.
You beat me to it. I got to get to the Red Rocks bathroom.
I know, man.
That's the prestige gig.
I know, yeah. I have one kind of, so like last summer, me and my bandmate Jonathan, we did a couple of those gigs.
Yeah.
And one of them was with Jason Mraz, and one of them was with Carlos Santana.
Damn.
And dude, Carlos Santana, it was cool. Like I feel like he was listening to us because we like played like before, like when they opened doors and like people were filing in. Mm-hmm. Then also during like the intermission between bands. And like we like finished our song and like we're doing like that trash can ending where you just kind of keep it rolling.
Yeah.
And like we were doing that, and he like sorted his up in a way that like he definitely like heard it.
Damn.
And like played off it.
He was like waiting for you to stop. That's amazing.
So I mean I feel like he's kind of one of those musicians who's tuned in like that.
Yeah.
He's not gonna be like, oh these damn. Fourth-rate musicians playing up by the
metal band.
Yeah,
what are they doing here?
Playing up by the bathrooms at Red Rocks.
That's awesome.
Who cares about them?
Was that before like his set? Was he going out for a sound check, or was that like before the actual set?
Before the actual set.
Oh, well, that's cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Damn. So you opened for Santana.
I can almost say I jammed with Carlos Santana.
Yeah, I think you can say that. I think you can put that on your
like the second
has shared the stage with?
Yeah, the second sentence of my bio.
Yeah. Has shared the stage with Carlos Santana. And when I introduce this podcast...
Oh, no, don't do that.
I'm going to read your press quotes. I'm going to say, shared the stage with Carlos Santana, and then I'll make up a couple other ones, too, just for fun.
Yeah.
My mic stand's kind of...
We live in the age where facts don't really matter, so we should really just start making up all kinds of stuff about our illustrious careers.
I think we should, yeah. And I'll tell you one thing that did get me in the podcast game.
Yeah.
I started it towards the end of last year. I started planning it, and I was like, I gotta figure out a way to have some semblance of control over the next election, because they're all decided in podcasts. So I was like, I'm gonna start a podcast.
Yeah.
And I'll decide the next election, I think.
Yep. Yeah, you're going to be like...
And we'll talk about something
bigger than Joe Rogan.
I think so. That's kind of the goal is,
You heard it here first.
Mayor Pete, if you're listening, this is how we take back the country, is on Songs Off the Vine.
Yep.
We're getting off the rails. Which is exactly the point of this show. But what was it that drew you to Longmont in the beginning?
Honestly, man, I really didn't have that much business moving here. Mm-hmm. I was just like young in my mid-20s. I I'm a little older than my then girlfriend, now wife Georgia. Like, I graduated. We met in college in Alamosa. There's a small school there called Adams State, and it was just kind of like, you know, at that point in life where you like finish school, trying to figure out what you're gonna do next. And honestly, it was kind of a matter of practicality in a lot of ways. Like Longmont was equidistant from home. Me and Alamosa and Georgia, she's from the Black Hills of South Dakota originally. So it was just kind of like equidistant from home. You know, like if it would have been just me, I probably would have chose Denver, just kind of being a bigger city and stuff. But yeah, it's in a lot of ways, man. Longmont is called kind of like a Goldilocks location, you know.
Yeah.
That it's especially like people like us that are come from more small town, rural type of thing, you know. Like it is kind of have a little bit of that, but you know, like being so close to Fort Collins, Boulder, Denver, I think it's a great location for music.
Yeah, I do too. Like, there's enough, like, for one, being in the middle of, like a lot of bands will tour Denver, Boulder, Fort Collins, or one, like, we'll be pretty close to someone.
Yeah.
Also, like, coming from a small town, I don't know if you still have panic attacks driving in downtown Denver, but I do not handle that shit well.
Oh, yeah, I mean, like, first couple months living up this way and like, yeah, just routine driving around, you're just like almost having a heart attack, you know. But it's crazy how like normalized you get to all that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And now it's just kind of like, oh, well, guess I got a gig in Denver, downtown Denver, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always make sure those pay a little extra now. I'm like, if I'm going to have to deal with the drive.
Yeah.
We played, what was it? The Roxy. And it was such a cool little spot. Really fun gig. But boy, driving down there during rush hour, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I am such a...
That
I need to
can
get
be
better at
stressful,
handling life. So you just put out a brand new single just like a few weeks ago, right? Called Lobo.
Yeah.
I haven't listened to it all the time. And also heard the band play it live at Dickens just a few days ago, probably like a week ago when this comes out. It's such a killer song, man. And it sounds amazing.
Thank you.
It's like a bit of a departure sonically. It's kind of like piano ballad sort of vibe with some like lush strings, beautiful production.
Yeah.
But still sounds like so much like an Antonio Lopez song.
Yeah.
What was the process writing that like?
Oh, you know, I'm going back to when I wrote it because I've actually kind of been. I guess the seed of that song came about from this tour that my bandmate Jonathan and I went on like in the spring of 2022. We went and did mainly some house concerts in the Tucson area, and you know, just something about traveling around the Southwest. Then coming back home, my wife and I, we went camping along the Poudre River west of Fort Collins. And I have a distinct memory of, like, writing the first two verses of that song and the chorus, like, in a hammock along the river. You know, and that was, like, the seed of that song. And in terms of it being, like, a piano ballad, you know, I would say that in some ways, this is the closest I've ever come to like ripping something off, because it has a very like Beatles-esque like Let It Be kind of vibe. But I think it's kind of like that, like perfect amount of familiarity, but then something a little different, you know. And not to say that it's a verbatim rip off of that, but it just kind of does have that like Beatles-esque piano ballad. Yeah. And there's been like a specific song form that I've always been drawn to my whole life, which is basically like the epic ballad.
Yeah.
You know, and ones that come to mind are like Guns N' Roses, November Rain, Under the Bridge, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Iris by the Goo Goo Dolls, Let It Be, Beatles. Yeah. You know, and there's just something about like that like classic timeless ballad that starts small and builds and kind of gets big and explodes.
Yeah.
And that's basically what I was trying to do with this song, you know.
Yeah, you did it. And speaking of song form, it like the bridge comes like halfway through the second or third verse, I think, right?
Yeah.
It like sneaks up on you.
Yeah.
It was so cool. And that was like part of the explosion. You have this like bridge coming in that is like slightly different than the beginning of the chorus.
Yeah.
And then it explodes from there. Was that an intentional part of writing?
Yeah, I'm really fortunate to have a killer band that we've been playing together for a long time with, and it just affords us to like spend a lot of time on details and arrangement, as opposed to just being like, man, this is the chorus, this is the verse, okay, go. And like we put a lot of care into just like the arrangement and just having new elements come into the song little by little, Mm-hmm. And I always think about like that bridge that you're talking about, like when that hits, like whenever I'm writing something or arranging something, I always think about like, okay, me as the artist, like I kind of know the song, I know what's happening, but you got to think about it from like a person hearing it the first time. And like I always try to do things that, that familiar thing, but then also something that's really surprising.
Yeah.
And I feel like we accomplished that on this one.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's all like surprising decisions, but perfect decisions too. And there's like the moment when is it like the claps come in at the second half of that bridge, and you're like, oh, this is the most satisfying clap track I've ever heard.
Yeah.
And yeah, such a beautiful song.
Yeah, that was fun doing that, man. We would all just, hey, let's go put some claps on this, and gather around one mic and just do the thing,
Yeah. Did you do this one? Was it at Coop Studios?
Yeah, we did the tracking for this one at Coop Studios and did all the mixing and all that kind of stuff over at Chris is the drummer's house. He lives here in Longmont.
Nice.
And then he's got this really cool kind of like mentor type situation with this mastering engineer out in LA named Michael White.
Okay.
That he mastered Lone Lobo, and he's gonna be mastering like all this stuff that we're putting out from here on out.
Nice.
Just because I mean, mastering is one of those things, like people, like it seems like not that big a deal, but it is a big deal.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like what gives you that like professional, like that final professional thing that like you hear it next to something else, and you're not gonna be like, oh, this one's pro, this one's homemade sort of thing,
Yeah, it's like really that thing that glues it together. Yeah. For those of you who are not musicians and do not know what mastering is, neither do I. No.
I just pretend like I do. So.
I know.
I'm like, oh, I can so hear the difference. It's
I'm
so
like,
good.
I know. Because it was so fun. We had, I think the last two albums mastered by David Glasser at the Airshow studio. And it was just this like gorgeous studio. And like, this is the best your songs ever sound. And he makes these tweaks and he's like, what do you think? And I'm like, I got no idea.
Yeah.
But then at the end, when you listen to the unmastered version and the mastered version, even like if you match the volume, there's like so much that it does that's like, I keep hearing this thing and keep thinking about something in music production that all the best stuff should be felt and not heard. And I feel like that's like the essence of mastering, is like you feel and have an experience with the music so much better.
Yeah. It's all,
but if you,
oh, go ahead. I'll cut you off.
But if you have to, describe it, and laymen like me wouldn't know what to say.
I mean, I think you totally hit the nail on the head there when we're talking about like how it feels, because it's like we could think about things a whole lot and like kind of like rationalize of like, well, we could do this or we could do this, but it's just like music is such like a feeling thing that it's just like, hey man, kind of sometimes turn your brain off and just feel the music, and that will kind of lead you in the right direction.
Song's not about words, it's about feeling.
Exactly, yeah.
I'm quoting every artist. I have to quote their songs. And hopefully, I'm hoping to the point where I do it to an obnoxious extent.
Oh, yeah.
I'll try and do it a few more times. And
well, you're going to have to do it a lot, because I love the sound of my own lyrics being quoted, so.
Yeah, that's me too. There's a line on Lone Lobo that lives with me a lot, that I load you up with and have you talk about.
Yeah.
I'm wandering the mountains they drove my ancestors from.
Yeah.
That's one that just hits pretty profound now more than ever, I think.
Yeah.
Can you go a little more into that line?
Yeah, so lone Lobo. Yeah, one of those words is Spanish, wolf, but I don't really know Spanish. I have like this fragmented, limited vocabulary that has to do with like my own heritage and place in the world and stuff. And I always like to write songs that have multiple layers to them, in the sense of like, okay, this story like could be taken very literally, and it's literally about this wolf that's like outside in the woods and like what he's doing. Yeah. And it works on that level. But then I'm also like talking metaphorically. And even though I'm singing in the first person, and I am singing from like that perspective, but sometimes like you're singing about me, I, but it's not really me, I.
Yeah.
But it kind of is. And it's like this back and forth. And I've always kind of been drawn to that ability to like write a song and sing from specific perspectives. So bringing it back to that line, like, I'm wandering the mountains they drove my ancestors from. Like, hey, that happened to wolves in Colorado. They reintroduced them, and that's kind of like a real hot button issue. About what some people think like, oh, it's horrible that they brought wolves back, and some people think that's really cool. So there's kind of that, but then I'm also talking about like my personal heritage, being a Chicano and having like indigenous blood and being from this like part of the world, and like just kind of like the bad stuff that has happened to people in my bloodline, and it's, I don't know, man, like I think we could get so attached to like me, I, my pain, what's happened to me, and like, I don't know, man, I'm singing from this perspective of where I am in the world, where I see it, like my heritage, but I'm never like so fixated on that, in the point of like, man, like I see other people's pain, like everyone's, not just like a chosen few or whatever. It's like all of us have this, and I think like singing about that kind of stuff like in an open-hearted way, not like a closed-hearted way. Like, I mean, I think that's a really powerful place to come from, and I think it feels right. So that's just where I'm coming from.
That's really beautiful. Yeah. It's such a cool thing to hear too, that has specific meaning and it has general meaning, and it's kind of everything in between. Because I feel like so much of what great music can be is speaking to one person and speaking to everybody and speaking to who knows really, and that like nebulous space is, I think, all the good stuff.
Thanks, man.
I love it, man. Let's talk about, you talked a little bit about working with the band on that recording. You have just a dynamite band that you've been working with for a while now.
Yeah.
And it's also a band that you play with live and is pretty much on the record. Like the record and the band and the record and the live show are pretty similar.
Yeah.
Which for singer-songwriters, I think that's a really rare thing.
Yeah.
And they're just, tell me a little bit about your process working with them, how their space in your songs, like co-writing and producing.
Yeah. I'm so fortunate to work with these guys. I think one of the secrets is I just try to be cool to them. Yeah. Like we practice almost every Monday night, and like it's probably been about several months back. I was like, man, like this is some dedication for everyone to get together every Monday night, like the start of the week. All the things that everyone's got going on, they're carving out the space to make it happen. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna start making dinner for them every Monday night.
Damn.
Yeah, it's just like a little, just like, to me, it's like those little things, man. Yeah. It's like, feed them. That's one less thing for them to figure out between like, okay, I got out of work and I'm gonna go to rehearsal, So I think that just little things like that, man. Good email communication, Just like if there seems to be like any tension or anything, maybe just talking about things before they fester too long. And yeah, I'm fortunate, like Chad, the bass player, we've been playing together now for 9 years.
Wow. That's crazy, yeah.
Jonathan, the marimba and vibraphone player, we've been playing together now for 6 years. And Chris, the drummer and producer, it's been 4 years now.
Wow.
So, man, like I'm fully aware, like for artists at my level to have like such a solid band, it's been a unit for so long. Like that's crazy.
What's it like recording with them from a creative perspective? Do you bring songs yet to be fleshed out with them? Are they a part of like the arranging, lyric writing at all?
Not really any of the lyric writing, but all three of them play a major hand in terms of like parts and helping with arrangements and stuff. I mean, we're pretty, like, I don't know, I really trust them a lot, and I like what they bring to the table. I think our workflow is getting more and more streamlined, just in terms of kind of seeing what each of our strengths are, and our skill sets are real complementary. Having Chris in the band, being such a good engineer and producer, and now he's got the new studio space, new home for Worker Bird Studios, where it used to be the home for Wind Over the Earth, and now it's Chris's spot. I still can't believe that.
Yeah. Because you made an album in that space when it was Wind Over the Earth, too. That was Roots and Wings, right?
Roots and Wings, we recorded in that space. And I mean, at that point in time, I like couldn't believe that studio. I was like, man, this place is so sick. Like, never been in a space like this before. And now, like, fast forward about 6 years later, and just being like, wow, now the drummer in your band, this is his space.
Yeah.
That's crazy, And we were doing some basic tracking a few weekends ago. We got about 9 new songs that are in process, and I was telling Chris, it's like, dude, like the stuff that we're doing right now, this is exactly the kind of stuff you dream about when you're a teenager and just like dreaming about music, a life in music, Yeah. And it's those sweet moments like that just like honestly make up for all the BS that we have to endure as artists. So
that's amazing. Makes it worth it.
It does, man. Like,
it's beautiful.
As uncertain as I feel in so many ways, like not just musically and professionally, but just like in the world and so many things. It's like, man, like when you break it down and like the community that you have with your band, and then expanding outside of that band and people like you, Tim, like, man, I was thinking of this the other night at the Dickens when you came out, and like y'all, there was a good crew of y'all that came out together, and I was just thinking of how important that community of other artists and musicians is. And it could sometimes seem like such like a anonymous path in a lot of ways, that you're just always like wanting to be more known and more successful, and just like, oh, I'm not doing all the things that I wanted to be doing by this point in time. But then if you just like hit that we run button and you're like, wait a second, like I'm part of this community of people that are doing cool things that I really admire and inspire me. It's like, that's kind of sounds really cool. Yeah. That sounds like a more inspiring thing to like keep me going day in and day out than just be like, man, like I want to get more Spotify listeners or more YouTube subscribers.
Yeah,
which I do want those things.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I think about that all the time too here, like just how lucky we are to be surrounded by, like, growing up in Western Nebraska, it was like I would open for metal bands and bluegrass bands, and moving here and coming to a community of like folks who are making music that I would want to listen to.
Yeah.
That was huge. It was like, oh my God. And then them being like supportive people who are like, we're going to pour into each other and like build something together. It seems like, I don't know if all music communities are like this, but that there's just a general energy of like, we're all going to lift each other up. I think there's like, I don't ever get a sense of like competitiveness or like, there's just a lot of building up, I think. And
I think this scene is a lot more supportive of other artists.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are a lot of other scenes that are a lot more like, hey man, this is my lane and that's your lane, and like, don't come over here because I don't want you to like infringe on the things I'm doing.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Where I feel like here, it's very grassroots, man. Yeah, and like there's beautiful things about that. Sometimes it's frustrating.
Yeah,
you know, like sometimes I'm like, man, like Longmont with the scene that we have, like there should be more infrastructure than there is.
Yeah,
you know, but I don't know, man. Mm-hmm. I've spent a lot of my time here, like trying to foster more of that and work on that. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you wonder, you know, like what's effective and what isn't. And like getting back to the supportive thing, and just like how our community is like that. It's like, you know, like being supportive, that makes more of a difference than like the idea of these other entities that are somehow going to make our life better.
Yeah,
you know, like that's kind of like a pipe dream in a way of like, well, if only
whatever, if we had 100-seat theater, you know, that people would pay tickets to see, like a nice listening room in Longmont, or anything that you could add to the list, which I think are real things and good for us to be aware of. Like, you know, it's like there's definitely space for this community to grow. When I talk to people about it and people ask me about the scene here in Longmont specifically, I'm like, I feel, and like, if there's good collaboration and support and everything, I'm like, there's such great collaboration amongst artists. Yeah. And there could, you know, it's interesting where there's spaces to build more, for one, find more venues and build an infrastructure that allows the whole thing to like have more exposure, to have a wider audience. And I think those are all super important things. But also at the same time, it's like, what else is there other than us all being together in a venue, you know, than Antonio being up in the stage at the Dickens and us being there and getting to chat with each other and the whole thing, you know. You're like, all of these, there's plenty of things that would make this community better. But also, you know, they all show up. We have the venue. There's sold out shows. You know. Yeah. And I think there is a lot of stuff happening right now that like is really exciting, man. Like I just think over on Kimbark Street, where like right before I came over here to record this podcast, I was teaching some piano lessons over at Butterscotch Music Studios. Yeah. And I mean, then 2 doors down from that, there's Working Bird Studios, recording studio, and I just kind of see like, you know, little things like that. It's you gotta appreciate them when they exist, because there's no guarantee that they're like gonna be going on forever, you know. But they could be the seeds of something great. And what I see in them is like, it's people that have been a part of this community and have been a part of this scene for a long time, who are just kind of like taking that next step in it, you know. And I see like what you're doing over at Longmont Public Media is like, that's you being a musician, being an artist, and like going into the next chapter of it. You know, so it's like, I don't know, man. It's like, on one hand, it's exciting. On one hand, it's kind of depressing, because it's like, we're not young kids anymore, Tim. No. It's, you know what I mean? It's like weird. When we met each other, dude, we were so green and so like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and just like, so like, just like, beautifully naive in a way, you know? Yeah. And it's like, we're not really that anymore. No. But we're still in it, you know? And I say if you're still in it, you're still in it. That's everything. Yep. And like, it's so like, in that space, you have your vision of what success is, and then every year you get older, the idea of success gets more complicated, and your own relationship with your own work and all of it just gets a lot more difficult to have a positive perspective on, I think.
100%.
And I think part of it's just the world we live in. Like, there's things we value, and that's being on the stage at Red Rocks, and there's the slow grind of the middle isn't valued as much, but like, boy, so much beautiful stuff I think lives in that space. And I think about that so much too, like you and I meeting right when we moved here, being like, we're gonna, we surely would have played Red Rocks by now, right?
Yeah.
We would have been at the, the podcast we were on. It would have been, it wouldn't be in a bedroom, But then I think about it and I see like the greatest gift for me as an artist is having like watching you be a step and a half ahead of me, and like doing like writing amazing songs, important songs, like being so true to yourself, and it's such a gift to see that person who's just like right in front of you, and that's like such a gift to me to always see you there, and it's not Red Rocks, but you're doing amazing. Thanks, amazing man. Stuff, and it's like, of course you look at artists, you're like, you think you should look at, name any, we could be looking at Amos Lee or like Taylor Swift or like these big artists who are going somewhere, but it's like the ones that are right ahead of you, it's so valuable to have like really good ones in that spot. Now I'm spiraling off. I don't know where I'm going.
No. I mean, I totally agree with you, and it's like, man, being inspired by others, and especially having people that you know personally, that's a cool thing, man.
Yeah. So it's been fun to like listen to your music all week in preparation for this podcast, and I like listening through like the whole catalog because you've been putting out music for, I don't know, over 15 something like that years now, and it's fun to hear how artists change, but then those things that like stayed true. And there's this thing that I kept getting with your music, which was like such a firm, like, is really beautiful, like one foot in the past and one foot in the future, and striving to be in the present.
Yeah.
So you guys so much about like family history and about like sentimental, like childhood memories and where you came from, and so many songs too about the futures now and being in the present and everything. Is that where do you think that came from?
In a very short way to answer it, it's like, it's really hard to be present. It's really easy to get caught up in what you want the future to be like, or like what you miss about the past. And man, a lot of time could go by in a person's life where they're in those other two places and not truly being present, And I don't know, man. I don't know how much of it is just like the modern world, how much of it is just like stressors in life that like get you worked up, but in recent time I'm like, man, maybe I'm not as present as I've always thought I was or am. And it's weird because like I guess to pursue being a musician, there is like a certain amount of confidence that like is helpful, but then there is like, I don't know, like being a songwriter that's writing from a personal lens, there's like a certain amount of vulnerability there, and it's not just like you're trying to put out this like pop star facade that's like, like putting on the fancy car and the fancy watch and all the things, And, I mean, I feel like I'm kind of rambling a bit, but it's just like, you always are kind of taking stock of life and kind of the past, the future, where you are, what you're wanting to have happen. And yeah, it's an ever evolving thing. So I guess you're never quite sure, you know. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure in this moment.
I love it. That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
On Songs Off the Vine. We're here for that. I feel that. And it's always so interesting too, like relating to past work.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have such a love-hate relationship with my previous work. I always look at like the music that I put out 2 or 3 years ago. I'm always like, who is that guy? That sucks. And the music that I put out like 5 to 10 years ago, I'm like, oh yeah, I've got a little, you know, I've got a soft spot for that guy.
Yeah.
And then the music that I'm putting out now is all over the place. But
Yeah. But you got to respect like that wisdom
yeah.
that like a younger you had.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the thing about lyrics, man, is like, even though the words stay the same, like in a song, it's like their meaning changes through time.
Yeah.
You know, and specific to where you are in life, and that's just you as the artist, you know. And then language is a weird thing like that, you know, and it's just like, I guess, communication.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. These days, when you're sitting down to write a song, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, you know, man, really, I was thinking about that on the way over here, and I was like, I kind of feel like an imposter, Tim. 'Cause it's like, here I am coming over here to be on this podcast, talking about writing songs and being a creator, and man, it's sometimes it's hard to carve out the time to do it.
Yeah.
You know, and man, I really need to remind myself constantly that like this is the biggest part of the work. Is like sitting down, writing a song. And the crazy thing about writing songs is like they come in so many different ways. You know, some of them are real like lightning bolt inspirations, and some of them can just be like, you know what, I'm just gonna sit here and I'm gonna write a song. And it could be start out from a clinical place, but then like as the juices start flowing, start getting more creative. But yeah, I wish I had like a great soundbite answer for you.
Yeah.
But I guess the secret is to just sit down and do it.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of editing. You know, but not trying to edit too soon.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I kind of like say if a given song has 3 verses, I might end up writing 10 verses, you know, and kind of like almost be like Lego piecing them about and being like, you know what, like this one, when I first started writing the song, I thought it was going to be the first verse, but really it's the 3rd verse, you know. And like there's like the craft side of things is just like, okay, what are tools that I could use to like communicate better, you know. But then there also is just like that artistic side that it's like, you know what, there are no rules. Like I could do whatever. I don't care if someone that's more quote unquote knowledgeable than me like says this isn't the right way or whatever. It's just like there's so many different ways, man. And that's one thing I am coming from like a folk narrative standpoint. But sometimes I feel like that box could be very confining in the sense that there's so much other music out there that isn't very narrative and isn't very story based, but is still very evocative and still very much like paints a picture. And like, you know, like honestly, like I'm especially with the full band and us playing together for so long, it's like, man, like who knows, like I might end up going into territory that's more like indie rock than such like folk Americana type thing, you know. It's like I kind of tug back and forth.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I think it makes sense too, like because like the thing we do like from that folk perspective is pretty simple and bare bones, and in a way we have some expectations of what it's supposed to look like, especially when you go to a folk show at like a listening room you're like, I want to be tugged on emotionally. I want to know a story. I want to go somewhere. But then at the same time, sometimes having shows where that's less the aim. The aim is more to give someone a visceral reaction or whatever it could be. So much more fun, especially when you've got the band that can take you somewhere like that. It's like, yeah. And I know the Red Hot Chili Peppers are your book of hymns.
Oh, that's true.
To quote another line.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think there's some space to go that kind of direction.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. I mean, I'm excited to just like, man, like we were talking about carving out that time, you know, and just like, just sit down with some instruments, see what happens, you know, not have so much expectations of an outcome, and have fun with it.
Yeah. I love it. Speaking of that, do you have plans for the year for the band? I know there's some new music in the works.
Yeah, so you know, I wish I had a better way to promote what we're doing and like talk about it. I'm not really like in that stage of it right now, but I do think, like, especially like the stuff we recorded 2 weeks ago. It's like, man, like this stuff that we're laying down, it's the closest that I've ever come to like the sound that's in my head and in my heart, you know. So I'm just like, man, even though I feel so uncertain in a lot of ways, it's like, man, you're writing the best stuff you've ever written. Like, you're capturing it beautifully with this band. And I'm just kind of in that. That's kind of where I am right now, and I'm enjoying that.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, and I guess to just talk about like when they're gonna come out and stuff. Like, even though we have 9 songs, I'm thinking we're just gonna release them like as singles, but do like that waterfall style where it's like the first one has 1, the second one has 2 songs, and the third one has 3, and you're just adding on to what's already been out there. And you know, I'm sure you've seen that's kind of the way that artists are doing it now. Yeah. So
yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, and it seems like it's a nice way around. Like, you know, I think in like albums.
Yep.
And those seasons of music, but now you put out a full album and 10 tracks never get heard.
Yeah.
Whereas giving each song the time of day and building that into a longer thing.
Yep.
That's pretty cool. I dig it. One more thing before we get into the lightning round or the speed round. I don't know. One thing I always like talking to artists at is like this tricky thing of how do we like, what's it like for you? What have you learned in building a life around music? Is it such a tricky thing? I know I've had stretches of doing music full time and jobs and somewhere in between. And there's like so much personal. There's so much like it's loaded, and like our identity is wrapped into like what we do for money and how we like sort out our lives. And I just want to know, not necessarily what it's like now, but like what are some things you've learned about like making those decisions and building a life around your art?
Yeah, you know, I would say whatever a person has to do to survive, you know, there's no shame in any of it. You know, and I know that like we live in a society that's like very like class warfare basically, you know. And it's just like, man, people on the lower end of the economic spectrum, they work harder and are just as smart as these successful business tycoons or whatever, you know, sometimes even more thrifty and smart.
Yeah.
You know, and speaking about like how we get so wrapped up in our identity and like what we do to make money, you know, like honestly, like that's something I've really been struggling with these last couple years. Just because like, hey, I'm just gonna say it, like I'm more successful financially now in my life than I've ever been.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not coming through music. You know, it's my wife Georgia and I, we own and run a small business that it's handmade jewelry. It almost sounds like an imaginary thing where it's like, hey, we make handmade jewelry and sell it on Etsy.
Yeah.
It kind of like the BS meter is kind of like beep, 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 going up, but it's like, no, it's the
We'll
truth.
link it in the show
It's
notes.
the truth. It's the truth, and it's like it's a beautiful story because it's like you know, we were talking about we both moved to Longmont around the same time in 2012. And I mean, in Georgia, we were just trying to figure out ways to make rent, you know, and buy groceries and all that sort of thing. And you know, at that point in time, I was a janitor in the public schools and finding a few gigs here and there, but they were the kind of gigs where it's like, hey man, here's $25 and a piece of pizza, you know? And I was grateful for it.
Yeah.
But Georgia was like, well, my older sister taught me how to make nose rings, and she was into making like earrings and just other jewelry as well. She's just like, I'm gonna open up an Etsy shop.
Mm-hmm.
And fast forward, what is that? About 13, 14 years later.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of both of our main gig right now, to the point where we're honestly struggling balancing like doing all the things for that business and keeping it afloat and operating well. And like my heart is in music, Georgia's heart is in her biology work.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just finding that balance. But money seems like such a taboo thing, you know?
Yeah.
And especially when you're an artist, man.
Oh gosh.
Like it like you almost feel like ashamed, and like you feel like, well, I lose my cred like if I'm like not just like barely making it, like I don't have credit anymore.
Yeah. There's not like a right answer really for
yeah, and it's so messed up.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then there's also like that other side of it. It's like if you achieve like an astronomical amount of success, then people like do want to support that.
Yeah.
But they kind of don't want that like middle ground sort of thing. And maybe I'm completely wrong. I know for a fact I'm projecting.
Yeah.
But I am kind of like to be completely candid. Like I'm struggling with it right now, man. And yeah, because like I can't message and communicate in the same way that I was like 10 years ago, because my life is a little different, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of value in you just saying where it's, you know, being honest with it, because like, boy, I feel like there's so many more people that are struggling with that, because it's such a challenging thing for us to sort through. Like the way we make, like so many people are at holidays with family from the small towns, and they're talking to you about money and how you make money as an artist. And you know, maybe surely it comes from somewhere else. And like the whole conversation is so loaded and so exhausting.
Yeah.
And we don't talk about it that much, that it just makes it more complicated. And like I feel the same way so often, just like whether it's not enough money or whether it's like, you know, I have a full-time salary job now, and I have a similar kind of struggle of like I'm singing and living from a different place than I was before. And and what does that mean as an artist? And you know, if I'm someone who's dedicating my life to this and I'm spending a whole chunk of my week somewhere else, what is that? It's like there's so many, like I feel like we have this idea of what an artist and a musician should be, and it's, you know, they should give themselves fully away to that, no matter how much money comes away. And maybe that's great. That's like a recipe that works great for someone.
Yeah.
You know, there's like a million different ways that it can come together. Yeah. And I like talking to people about it on here because I want to put it out there. I just want to, you know, I'm like, feel like there needs to be more voices of like everybody who's living a creative life and making stuff. Like no story is the same. Like every single one is different. And also none of them are easy really, no matter where it comes from.
Yeah. And like, man, there's such a diversity in ways to make it work. And like, if you can find a way that makes it work, it's like kudos. you know, and that's cool, man. And like I said earlier, like if you're in it, you're still in it.
Yeah.
You know, and there comes through phases of like how much time and energy you're able to put into music. It kind of ebbs and flows. You know, and I don't know, man. There was like about a 7-year stretch in my life where like I was like had that like badge of honor on my sleeve of like being like a working musician, you know.
Yeah.
But it's like really, dude, like I worked so hard that like it was not sustainable.
Yeah.
From like just like hours in the day and the amount of time spent in the car and all the things, and you know, like washing dishes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
it's brutal.
I don't know, man. There's just like such like a weird. It's such like a weird taboo subject.
Yeah.
And some people get like so hierarchical about it. Of like, there's like this hierarchy of like, well, I'm a musician and this is I only do this, but you have a day job, so that doesn't make you as much of a musician. Yeah. And you know, like I've been on I've done so many different things in my life that like, hey man, I've experienced a lot of different sides of that equation. And I don't, man, there's a David Ramirez lyric that comes to mind, and I forget the song, but he's just talking about this dude that he meets like just kind of like after his show when they were like hanging out, passing a guitar, playing songs, you know, and he's like, I'm paraphrasing here, so I'm gonna mess up the lyrics, but he's like, this guy was the best songwriter I've ever met. I asked him where to buy a CD, and he just laughed and lit a cigarette.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's just like, dude, there's so many gems of creative people out there, whether it be someone playing music or someone that could draw a picture or whatever. There's so many creative people out there, man.
Yeah.
And you know, like whether you do it as part of your life, whatever, like if creation is to express and creation is to enhance life. Yeah. You know, and yeah.
Just it goes back to what you were saying earlier, just being a part of it and in the thick of it and the middle of it is the whole joy. Yeah. And there's something too, like, you know, we go through these different phases and now you know, I think there's a lot of value to the fact that you're making the best stuff you've ever made and feel as excited as ever about it. I feel like that's like a truth that like is the thing that matters, is like when you got pen to page and when your hands are on the guitar, if that's like the moment that's right, then I think there's everything else can fall behind that kind of thing.
Yeah, like if you write something that moves you, then there's a chance that it might move someone else.
Hell yeah.
You know, but it's no guarantee. But I mean, hey man, if I dig it, then I did my job.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, shall we get to the speed round?
Sure.
As a way to ramble it down. I see David Letterman do this, so I always want to do it.
Oh yeah,
that felt good. I'm trying to become I'm learning how to become a host of a show.
You're doing great, man.
Thank you. That felt like a power move.
Yeah.
Just throw paper. I don't know.
I dig it.
Do you have a dream co-write? Someone you dream to write a song with?
You know, I feel like I totally have that answer.
Yeah.
But now that you're asking me it, I'm like, who? I can't remember who that is. I could get super geeky and like say a lot of people, but this since it's a lightning round, I'm gonna like try not to ramble too much.
I'm gonna let you know.
But I really like Dan Wilson.
Oh yeah.
Who was the lead singer of Semi-Sonic, and everyone knows like that '90s hit,
Closing Time. Yeah.
You know, but it's like if you dive into him, man, he's co-wrote so many like big hits of since that song up until now.
Bunch of Adele songs.
Yeah, a bunch of Adele songs.
Huge, smash hits.
So
always.
I think that would be cool.
That's a good one. One.
Yeah.
And I was going to say a secret about the speed round is it's not really a speed round.
All
it's
right.
whatever. That's kind of the whole show. We set it up this way, and it's like, it's just, it doesn't matter. Do you have a favorite songwriting tool? It can be an instrument, it can be a book, it can be an app, it can be a capo gear.
Yeah.
It can also be more than one.
Yeah. Man, I know it's a more romantic answer to like say something that's analog.
Yeah.
Like, oh, there's this leather bound notebook and like all these things, but it's like honestly, like I think it's badass that I could write something on my phone and then find it later, as opposed to being like, oh man, which notebook was this in, or like where's this random piece of paper, So honestly, like I really dig just the notes app on my phone and how I'm able to like shuffle things around on there. That's been working pretty good for me these last several years.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's the same with me too. I'm like, my handwriting and my like every piece of paper I own just gets crumbled up somewhere. So like to just have it all on a phone. Yeah. Also, I don't know if you use the voice memos like recording. I heard there's an update on the phone where you'll be able to do overdubs with that.
I did hear about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't tried it, but
and one other thing I noticed is like if you do like a voice memo nowadays, like it kind of like transcribes the words.
Oh,
which is in one hand is kind of freaky, but on another hand it's like, man, that saves so much time. Like if you like have this rehearsal recording and you're just like, oh, I want to go back to this one song or something, you can find that lyric.
Yeah.
And that's, I don't know, man, like technology is pretty cool in those ways, to kind of capture things and remember things.
It's handy, man. Yeah. I think of that even like if you're like through songwriting. So I know some people like to just start recording and like play out the verse, like instead of writing it down, just kind of sing through a bunch of things until they find it. I'm like, if you could just sing it, and if it transcribes, that's quick.
And another trick that I find very cool is like, like if you're like working on some verse lyrics, and like, man, sometimes it could get tiring to just play those same chords over and over. Mm-hmm. It's like, screw it, I'm just gonna like record a little snippet on my phone that's just the chords, and then I could be lazy and still write this song and just sing over it.
You don't have to play.
You don't have to play. Yeah. That's I dig that, man.
That's a good move. I'm gonna use that one. I'm gonna use that. Get a little loop pedal out.
Yeah.
Oh man, what's an artist we might not know about but we should know about?
Yeah. So I've really been digging a lot of singer-songwriters from South America lately. And I said earlier how I don't really know Spanish. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting because like I'm listening to all these artists that I don't really understand their lyrics, but I'm just digging like just what's happening musically. So there's this one Chilean singer-songwriter named Manuel Garcia.
Okay.
That I've really been digging his stuff. It's so beautiful. There's this artist from Mexico named Natalia Lafourcade. That like she's so good. Like she might be my favorite musician right now.
Oh damn.
Yeah, I got tickets to go see her at the Paramount in Denver in June.
Oh sweet.
And like that was the first time that I've ever been like, man, I'm jumping on like the pre-sale to get these tickets.
Yeah, getting like front row.
Yeah. Well, I got like third row from the back on the balcony, but that's just because that's what I mean, dude. Like she, I think in like the Spanish speaking world, like she's super popular.
Okay.
Like those tickets, like I'll guarantee that they probably sold out like before they actually went publicly on sale. You know what I mean?
Damn, yeah.
So I mean, I'm really digging those artists, and I think a lot of it has to do with there's music is so melodic, and from like the singing point of view, the guitar playing point of view, just like all the different instruments, and it's just blooms in a way that's really beautiful that I dig.
Nice.
Yeah.
I dig that. I'm gonna have to check those ones out.
Yeah.
What song do you want to be played at your funeral?
I have no idea.
I love it.
Yeah. What song do you want to have played at your funeral?
I have two answers. I kind of want to come up with more. The one was Both Sides Now, which you actually have a cover of on a record. I remember,
That's a good funeral song.
This is a good funeral song. Yeah. The other one is No Hard Feelings by the Avett Brothers.
Oh yeah.
I think that's kind of like written to be a funeral song.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like I don't know. There's something to funeral songs. Not like traditional funeral songs. But yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
But let us know when you get. We'll have you on the pod again.
I was just wondering, like, do you think it's too vain to have my own song played at my own funeral?
Well, you wouldn't be the first on this podcast.
Oh yeah.
No, yeah.
Who said that?
Shannon Address, but she's got a good one.
Oh, roast me at my funeral.
Yeah,
that's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah.
An obvious. I'm trying to remember what else. I feel it. Yeah, but you could do one of your own songs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
TBD.
Yeah, your version of Both Sides Now.
That's a good funeral song.
My funeral. It all comes together.
Yeah.
Last question for this. What's your favorite thing about being a songwriter?
My favorite thing about being a songwriter is honestly it helps you process your own feelings and process the world. And I think it's a healthy way to do that. Mm-hmm. You know? Like, yeah.
Yeah. That's as good as it gets.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, thanks so much. We're going to do a little set change here. We're going to set up to play a couple songs, I think.
Sweet.
I'm not sure yet, for those of you listening on the pod right now, if it's going to be at the end of the episode or if it'll be on YouTube later. I'm kind of sorting out, like, I know rights and on podcasts are a little more complicated than just, like, posting a video.
Gotcha.
So all that to say, keep an eye out for a song. If it doesn't come next, then seek it out on YouTube or something like that. But I was like, well, we're here. Let's set up and do a song. Yeah. And before that, thank you so much for being on the show and your friendship and just you're such a special artist and such a wonderful friend, community member, and you just bring so much good stuff to the world. So thank you, Antonio. Yeah,
it's been a pleasure hanging out with
you. All right, that's our show. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thanks to Antonio Lopez for being the guest this week. Catch our video of Long Monday on this YouTube channel now. If you enjoyed the show, please make sure you're subscribed and give us a 5-star rating if you dig it. Special thanks to Longmont Public Media for letting me use the camera. If you're interested in starting your own podcast or making any kind of content, stop by and see me there. I'll help you get started. The theme music is Off the Vine by me. That wonderful vocal arrangement you heard in the middle on that song is by Chad Mathis. That wonderful little mandolin riff was written by Seth Phillips. Thanks so much to Jenny Bellani for all her support of this show and our producers, Simon and Mipsa. That's a P-U-R, a purr, like a cat purrs. All right, it's time to call it a show. See y'all next week.